Hi everyone, welcome to the TechGig webinar. Thank you for joining the session today. The topic of today's webinar is Migrating Legacy Applications to AWS Cloud, Strategies and Challenges. We expect the session to last for an hour with 40 to 45 minutes for the presentation and the remaining 15 minutes for the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please send them to us using the questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel. I am Sabha, the moderator of this session, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our guest speaker, Mr. Ram Avadh Prasad, Associate Principal Solution Architect at OSS Cube Solutions Limited. He is an AWS certified associate level and project management professional. He has over 17 years of experience in architecting and implementing open source web applications. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Ram.
Thank you, Sava. Thank you for the great introduction. Hi, everyone. Hope you are doing well and welcome to our webinar on AWS. Before we begin with the webinar, let me briefly walk you through the background of OSS Cube. We are a global solutions provider headquartered in US, having offices in UK and India. We offer complete solutions in the domain of digital transformation, IT modernization, and Internet of Things. In the space of IoT, we are extensively working with creating certain IPs about which we'll probably hear soon. OSS Cube has been amongst the top 100 great places to work for 3 consecutive years, starting from 2014 up to 2016. It was included in the NASSCOM's top 5 places to work in 2015, and this year OSS Cube has bagged the Emerging Top 20 award and has been named as one of the SME 100 award winners. Some of our prestigious clients include New York Times, Acer, PVR Cinemas, CU Solutions, Intel, Make My Trip, GoGo, and many more. Our digital transformation practices focus on improving customer experience using best of the breed product information management, web content management, digital asset management, and e-commerce solutions. Our IT modernization practice offers a complete range of solutions around the cloud, enterprise mobility, and application modernization. And our IoT practice of smart track and trace, product lifecycle management, and big data analytics solutions. We are a partners of AWS, Talent, MariaDB, Sugar CRM, Magento, and Drupal. So with this small introduction, let's begin with the webinar of the day. As you are already aware, the topic of today's webinar is migrating legacy applications to the AWS cloud. So before we discuss this topic about migrating legacy applications to the cloud, let's give a brief interview of how the cloud is changing the business paradigm, how the new benefits and opportunities are rising in the cloud. Why migrating to legacy applications to the cloud is a challenge. How to go with the migration with these applications, how to leverage the cloud services to enhance your application, and how you can optimize your applications further on the cloud. So these are the brief of the topics that we are going to cover in the webinar today, starting with the business changes that cloud computing is bringing. So as I said, cloud computing, it is a new and emerging technology, and it is basically changing on how businesses operate. It is not just an advancement in technology. It represents the people, the process, and it is transforming the entire system. It is transforming the business models, introducing new efficiencies at enormous speed. So the cloud is not just a technology, it's about people, it is process, about systems. The things are changing. The companies have started doing business in completely different ways. Let's just have a look at this graph. It shows how the public cloud infrastructure has been increasing and what is the projected trend. As you can clearly see, the trend is rising at an enormous rate and is set to rise for the next few years. And let's have a quick look at some of the figures that show the enormous rise of the cloud computing. So if you see the growth in public cloud computing just over 2015 to 16 has been projected to around 16.5%. And of these, 38.4% will just come from the infrastructure services. Similarly, the workloads processed by cloud data will rise by 86% by 2019. And the load on the cloud data will increase 3.5-fold. This is much higher than 2.5-fold increase that is going to happen on the traditional data centers. So the figures just indicate that cloud computing is on the rise and it has a tremendous future, and of course it will go on rising as the new technologies emerge. The question comes, what is fueling this rapid growth? Why is cloud computing progressing at such a rapid pace? So some of the points that we would like to discuss are reduced infrastructure costs. As the technology increases, the cost of infrastructure, cost of computing, cost of storage, cost of memory, everything is reducing. And with this reducing cost, the overall infrastructure cost is reducing. This further leads to the time in reduction time to market. The companies are easily able to launch products to market. The products that used to take months to launch now are launched within days. Above all, the systems are now always available. So it is now not the paradigm of 8 to 5, or it is not day or morning. The companies are and the systems are available 24 hours. Business agility has increased. Above all, the scalability is almost virtually unlimited. So if you have 2 computers today, within minutes you can spin multiple computers. You have hundreds of servers, and that is without any manual intervention. It could be automatic. It can be just by few API calls or few mouse clicks. On-demand provisioning of the automation, flexible choice of programming models, and infrastructure process automation. All these factors have been rapidly increasing the cloud computing, the demand of cloud computing, and at this today, no company wants to be left out of this cloud technologies. Now that cloud computing is increasing at such a rapid pace, and naturally most of the applications are moving to the cloud, why do we want to discuss the legacy applications in particular? The reason is that legacy applications have their own challenges. They are different from the standard applications of the modern day. They are using slightly outdated technologies, old technologies, and the paradigm, the architecture on which they are based are completely different from what the cloud provides. So why do we want to migrate the application? Of course, to reap the benefits of the cloud computing. The business needs have changed. We need elasticity. We need to be global. We need to scale rapidly to the demands of the market. There were days when you could predict traffic that would be increasing or coming to your website or to your application. That has completely changed. You may remember of sales launched by e-commerce chains that result into millions of hits within hours. So the demand for elasticity, scalability, and global access is really increasing. The time to market the products on legacy application is longer, and that is not the demand of the day. Companies want to launch products immediately as fast as possible. The legacy applications are complex, they are less agile, and it's difficult to make changes. The architectural structure of these applications makes them difficult to interact with each other. The cost of maintenance and updates is quite high. Apart from that, given the multiple channels that we need for today's applications, it becomes quite difficult to integrate the modern applications with these legacy applications, especially if they are on-premise, they are using the standard desktop applications or the interfaces. It is difficult to upgrade these applications, and above all, business continuity and disaster recovery are really difficult. You can imagine when you have to copy your data to tape drive and send to a remote location, then get back that data. In case of a disaster, restore that data. That could take days or even months. So that cannot work in today's scenario. Now, when demands of the system are to be always up, you cannot wait for days for getting your systems up, for getting your applications back in place in case there is a disaster, in case there is an issue. So that's why there is an urgent need for migrating the legacy applications to the cloud, modernizing them, and making them at par with the other applications that we use. But not every application can be moved to the cloud so easily, so smoothly. There are challenges to be taken care of. So what are those challenges? The challenges are different. The application's architecture is outdated. Normally there are client-server applications or applications that are monolithic that cannot work on the distributed framework of the cloud computing. There is a lot of integration with other systems. There is tight coupling. A change in certain part of application may have impact on all other systems, so it is difficult to take out or disintegrate one part of application from other different parts. Data integration and migration is another challenge. Because data is stored in legacy systems, it may not be in standard systems, it may be using some old databases. That is a challenge that has to be taken care of. Licensing, not all service providers or vendors provide support for cloud licensing. So before you migrate your applications to the cloud, you need to consider how you will take care of the licensing issues. If the application is not supported for cloud licensing, then you have to look for alternates. What are the options? What else can you do? One of the biggest concerns apart from that is the security of data. There are legal issues related with, there are compliances to be made. Companies are just not willing, and they cannot, of course, let out their cloud on unsecure data unsecure. So security is one of the prime concerns that need to be taken care. And since legacy applications were not developed to be on the cloud, to be hosted in the cloud, they may not have the inherent security like encryption already in place in the data that needs to be taken care. One of the major concerns apart from this is the moment you move your data to the cloud, you fear a loss of control. What will happen? Will I be able to manage my data? What if someone gets access to it? What if the data might move beyond my control? It may be in another region. I may not know, because in cloud the infrastructure is not fixed. It may be variable, and you may not know where your data is hosted. So that is one of the major concerns, because there are cases when you need your data to be located in a specific region, probably because of legal compliance, probably because of security. And then comes vendor lock-in, the most feared factor. What if I move my data to cloud and then it is not compatible with other vendors or my normal applications? How will I get back my applications? So these are the challenges that we need to overcome when we are migrating the legacy applications to the cloud. But if we use a phased approach, we can of course overcome this challenge with a proper planning, with proper help from appropriate consultants. We can overcome all the challenges and migrate data successfully to the cloud. So what are these phases? How we can execute these phases, and how we can successfully migrate our applications to the cloud. The approach that we are going to discuss is a general approach, would be fit to any application that we want to move or migrate to the cloud, but we are discussing this in respect to the cloud applications that are legacy applications that have been designed in the old architecture. So a special care has to be taken. Let's go through the phases that we need to go through before we can move our applications to the cloud. So the first phase is an assessment phase. Naturally, like whenever you take any project, whenever you start new project, the first step on the project is to plan the project. Migration itself is a project, it is an architecture project, it is a transition project. So when you do a transition, you need to do a very careful assessment. You need to assess your application, your workloads, your security and compliance, your financial assessment, and then develop a migration plan. So the assessment should be very thorough, should consider all the factors that could affect your application, your business. So in the next few screens, let's go through details of the assessment steps, because personally I believe that this is the most important and the stage where you should put the maximum effort to get most out of your application. Okay. So what is the first stage here? When we start an assessment, as I said, not every application is right fit for the cloud. Not all applications should be moved to the cloud. All applications have different needs. They have different architecture. If you have application that is running on the in-house only and it is not used by any other user, it is running for limited users, there might not be a reason why you would move it to the cloud. Similarly, if there is an application that needs very high coherence, it cannot have latency issues. There should be very fast interaction between the systems that may not be available in the cloud. So you may consider keeping such application or a part of it that needs more closely knit systems on the premise. So the first step is to identify which applications can be moved to the cloud, and also in what order they should be moved. What should be the priority? Which applications will give you the best benefit or most benefit to your business? What applications should not be moved? They could remain in-house. And apart from these, there may be applications which neither can remain completely in-house nor can be completely moved to the cloud. So in these cases, in case of such applications, we need to plan a hybrid environment. So we need to plan which parts of the application can remain in-house, which part will move to the cloud, and how the two parts will communicate. So what are the considerations? How do we identify which applications are the best fit for moving to the cloud? This is a very important step, because when we can identify which applications are the right fit for our cloud, half of the work is done. So the key considerations are our business, the life cycle of the application, architecture, data, technology, security, and integration. So when we talk of business, we need to think how critical the application is to the business. Who are the end users? Are they agents? Are they internal users? Or are they a specific group of customers? Because based on who is accessing the application, you may decide whether you need to move the application on the cloud or not. Then the life cycle consideration. It may be possible that your application is just in the development, or it is being phased out and you probably would phase it out in a couple of years, or it is in some transition phase. Depending on that, you may decide, suppose your application is just being developed. So instead of migrating to the cloud, you may want to further develop on cloud itself instead of trying to migrate it half developed. Similarly, if you have an application that is going to be phased out in a couple of years, instead of trying to migrate that application, you may consider that, okay, let's put it here, let's start a new application, modernize this application. Another important factor is the application architecture. So as I said, cloud architecture is quite different from the standard on-premise architecture. There are latency issues, there is distributed computing involved, there are virtual resources to be handled, scaling has to be taken care of, vertical scaling, horizontal scaling. So that architectural considerations need to be taken care. You need to consider whether your application will be able to scale out to the needs. Will it be able to take the benefit of auto scaling? Will it be able to work in the distributed environment? Very simple things like session management can create issue when moved to the cloud environment. Another important issue is data consideration. You need to understand what is the current data source, whether you are using some old database structures, you are using unstructured data. You need to find out whether those databases can be moved to the cloud, whether they are compatible with the cloud licensing or not. Again, technology is the software or hardware that is needed by your application compatible or not. Does the cloud support, your vendor support those application software hardware? Is there appropriate security available for your applications? And will your application be able to integrate with the other applications that are on the cloud, the applications that are on premise? So all these considerations, when you consider all these factors, you will conclude that there are some applications that you could quickly move to the cloud. There are other applications that you need to do a lot of planning, and there might be applications that you just decide that let's leave it on premise, it is best fit here, or we go for hybrid. So a quick review of those factors, like which applications can we move, the applications with minimum upward and downward dependencies. So if your application is independent, it does not depend or has tight integration with any other application, you can quickly move it to the cloud. If you are using applications that is overusing assets, so it has very heavy servers or infrastructure that is underutilized, it is better to move it to cloud so that you are able to use only infrastructure that is needed. There might be cases where you have an application that you need to scale immediately, and that may not be possible when you are working on the cloud. We did face a similar scenario where we had to immediately migrate the server to a higher configuration, and we realized that the client who had the on-premise server said it was not possible to move that application from there to procure and provision a new server in the given bandwidth. So the quickest way for us was to move that on the cloud. So if you have an immediate need to scale, the cloud may be the best option. If you have the architectural flexibility in the application, if you think that your application, you know that your application will withstand the cloud architecture, it is built for scaling, distributed processing, cloud environment, then of course you will decide on to move the application to the cloud. Then there might be cases where your applications may be using traditional tape drives or traditional backup systems. Amazon AWS provides very efficient backup and archiving systems, Amazon S3, Amazon Glacier. So you might want to move those applications to the cloud so that they are able to use the features already available on the cloud. You don't have to provision the infrastructure, you don't need to buy the tape drives, send them to offshore locations or distance location, get back in the case of need. And there are applications that you need to access globally. So the best way to have it on the cloud. Also, there might be applications that are primarily used by partners. They are not used in-house. So of course, then they will be moved to the cloud. So once you do the assessment, you find the right candidate, you find which applications you might want to and you can move to the cloud. So as I said, one of the key considerations is the licensing options. So when we talk of AWS, it provides different kinds of licensing options. It has options to bring your own license. So some providers like Oracle, Sybase, Adobe have provided their licenses on the cloud. So if you are owning a product that you have on-premise license, for example for Oracle, you can move the same license to the cloud. For some cases like Red Hat, Noble, IBM, AWS provides utility-based pricing model licensing. So you don't have to procure a separate license. When you start using the application, the license fee is included in the use of the application. So there is a small licensing fee, there is application usage fee, and the combined, so you don't need to procure a separate license. And there is a third form of licensing, that is SaaS-based provider, which may not be relevant in this case because we are talking of moving legacy applications to the cloud. So after we consider the applications which are fit for the cloud, we consider the licensing options. We need to check the security and compliance assessment. We need to do a security assessment. What is the overall risk tolerance of the company? Will my data be confidential? Will the integrity of the data be available? What is the durability of the system? Are there regulatory or contractual obligations that we need to meet, whether my cloud provider will be able to meet that needs? What are the possible security threats and how we can overcome that? Is there any IP rights that we need to take care of? Like, it may be possible that the data is protected and cannot be moved out of the particular region, has to be located in a specific region. How will I be able to retrieve my data once I have to move, if I want to get back all my data? And are my users comfortable sharing the data and or using shared infrastructure resources? So when we consider these features, AWS is specifically very strong on all these parameters. It has very strong security features. It has very strong compliance inbuilt and supported by all the major standards, compliance standards and security standards. It has all the options that you can use to secure your application. You can locate your servers in specific regions. You can use single or shared or single tenancy models. You can have dedicated servers as well. Now, once you have identified the applications, consider the security parameters, you build the business case. This is an important step from the business perspective. The whole idea of moving the application to the cloud is that it should be beneficial to the business. It should bring in some benefits. It should make the application more cost effective or efficient or more user friendly to the customers. Unless your application brings in any new benefits to the business, why would you move the application to the cloud? So we need to do a cost analysis. We need to check the service levels that are available. We need to check the business impact that the application will have when moved to the cloud. Okay, so when we say cost analysis, it is very important because it is a tendency to consider only the overall cost when calculating cost. So I might tend to calculate only the hardware cost, only the server cost or network cost. There are several costs that we just ignore or miss out when calculating the cost of the infrastructure that we need to provision an application. So we should use a total cost of ownership methodology and consider all the costs, direct or indirect, and even quantify the indirect economic values of the cloud features. So what are those economic values? And what costs we should consider? So of course the hardware, software, network, that is the one that we always consider. But what about the ongoing services? What about the management cost? Application redesign. If you are moving to the cloud, you may need to redesign your application. You will need to deploy the application. You need testing. Application maintenance and administration. Application integration, training and cloud skills. So all these factors we need to consider when doing a cost analysis and then check whether it will be beneficial or we might think of other alternatives. But cost is not the only factor. Even if the application is beneficial moving to the cloud, the concern that we might face is what will be the service levels? Will my application have same or better availability when moved to the cloud? What will be the performance of my application? If I don't get a better performance, would I like to move that application to the cloud? How do I take care of the security? Will it be secure? And privacy, regulatory compliance. So on all aspects, we need to check the service level of the cloud provider. And again, when we talk of AWS, all these are very well documented. There are SLA documents when we talk of the services. For example, take example of S3. S3 is an object storage service on Amazon Cloud. AWS provides up to 11 nines of durability to the files. So that is the guarantee that AWS provides. Similarly, on the security front, on the compliance front, the app servers are compliant, PCI compliant, different compliance parameters, and all the documents are available on AWS websites. And apart from all the cost impacts, you also need to consider the business impact of moving the application. How will your revenue be impacted? Will you have better revenue? Will it provide more customer satisfaction? Will you be able to acquire more customers? Time to market the applications, will it improve or not? Cost of handling peak loads, everything that you think can impact your business, you need to consider. So once we have done the complete assessment of all the factors that we talked of, we need to develop a technical plan. So this consists of the steps that we would take to migrate our application to the cloud. Now we have assessed the application, we know that it is fit to move to the cloud. So we need to find the service model, we need to plan the migration of the application, we need to plan the data migration, security, integrity, monitoring and scalability. Everything has to be planned in a systematic manner. Let's talk of the data migration. Data migration we are specifically considering because it is one of the most complicated parts when moving applications from on-premise to on-cloud. Based on your needs, you need to consider what are the storage options available on the cloud. For example, on AWS, you have different RDBMS, commercial as well as open source. NoSQL options, you have data segment strategies and trade-offs. It provides you a lot of tools to migrate your data, but you may need to make trade-offs among various dimensions. What are you looking for? Are you looking for performance? Are you looking for durability? Are you looking for cost savings? So there are several things that you need to consider. What is the latency? What is the performance? Will you be using relational database or unstructured database? What is the size of your objects? How is your data accessed? It is read heavy or write heavy? How frequently it is updated? So AWS has different options for different scenarios based on what compromise you can take and how you can make the best use of the services that AWS provides. What are the trade-offs that you need to consider? So once you consider these trade-offs, you will reach a plan or architecture that will be best fit for your application and probably give the best outcome. So what are the options available on Amazon? So when we talk of file systems or backups, Amazon has elastic block store, that is kind of hard disk that can be attached to the servers or virtual servers. It has S3, that is an object storage. It has Glacier. It has EFS. EFS is a new launch service. You have RDS, relational database service, that is completely managed database service. It provides support for certain databases like Oracle, MS SQL, MySQL, but you can also launch other applications and databases from Amazon AMI. You can also use DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL database. Apart from the different kind of storage options, Amazon provides you features or tools to migrate your data, move your data to the cloud. So you have Amazon export import services where you can move large amounts of data, petabytes of data into the cloud by exporting data and sending it out directly to the AWS. You can use Amazon Direct Connect to have dedicated high-speed connection with AWS. You can use Amazon Storage Gateway for backup as well as data migration to the cloud. So there are different options. Now once we have the plan to move the data, how we move the application. So it is complicated, but there are different strategies. The two main strategies are forklift migration or hybrid migration. So when you go for forklift migration, you just migrate the entire application to the cloud. So you are just replacing your actual instances with virtual instances. So instead of VMs, you will be using EC2 instances. So there might be minor code changes and configuration needed. Similarly, we have hybrid migration strategy where you move only some parts of data. So once you have migrated the application, you need to identify the security concerns and address them. You need to identify what data needs to be protected, map your data security, examine all the applications. So basically, this is a standard process that we do with all the applications. You need to take care of all the security concerns. And then finally, you perform the migration. You deploy the application to the cloud environment, install and configure the application, harden the production environment, cut over to production and execute mock migration and cut over to the production. So these are basically standard steps that you follow even for the normal application migration. The key difference is the planning and identifying what services you will be using and how you will be moving the application, what applications you will be moving. Now once you have moved your application to the cloud, you can start further hardening it, working on your application security. So you can work on the credentials, resources, protect your data, automate your security policies, plan for backup and registers. So as you can see, there are different options available on the AWS. You can rotate your credentials. You can use multi-factor authentication. There are users, groups, rules, and policies. You can use IAM, you can use encryption at rest, or you can use SSL, you can use cloud profile. So there are so many different options. You can secure and harden your application. Once you have hardened the applications, it is running well, you start leveraging the AWS. You would like to make your application more efficient. There are hosts of services available on the AWS that you can use to make your application more powerful, more efficient, better architecture. So Amazon provides content delivery network, simple queue service, simple notification service. All those services, you can automate your RPC and SDLC. So you have code commit, code deploy for automatic SDLC. You have content delivery, static website or Amazon Cloud Front. You can use multiple availability zones for disaster recovery or better access. And once you have done all this, you can further optimize your applications by using the services like AWS has Cloud Watch that gives you different parameters and different usage parameters of your applications that you can use to optimize your application, scale your application better according to your needs. You can track your logs. You can implement advanced monitoring and even terminate and create instances automatically based on demand. So as the demand increases, more instances will be created, and demand decreases, the instances will be terminated. You can re-engineer your application. So before we come to the end, let's have a quick summary. So as I said, you can have a lot of benefits by moving to the cloud, moving your legacy applications to the cloud, but just moving the cloud does not make it more effective or efficient. You need a lot of planning. There are lots of challenges to be covered. You need to have a well-planned phased migration, and it is the key to successful migration. You can leverage the AWS advanced services and features to optimize your application on the cloud further. So that's all for this session, and with this we open to the questions and answers. Thank you. Okay, so we have started getting the questions. We have quite a lot of them, and we may not be able to cover all of them, but we will certainly try to cover as much as possible, and whatever we are not able to cover, we will definitely get back to you with a response on your question. So let's start with first question. It is a question from Amal Saha. The question is, can you please elaborate the use cases of on-premise gateway needed for mixed scenario? It is a quite good question. So what are the cases where we need a mixed scenario? There are certain cases where some of our applications need very tight integration. So suppose you have a computing applications that has been running properly and it does not interact with any other applications, but it has to interact with some of the applications, like some applications that can be moved to the premise. Say there is an image processing application. your processing still happens at the backend, but you need your submissions to come from the web. So while your submission part, email submission part, still can be moved to the web where users can access them from globally and submit the request, the processing may still happen at the backend. This is not the best example, I must say, but there could be such scenarios. So moving on to the next question. This is a question again from Sagar Naraware. The question is, how will this shift to public cloud help organizations who have invested heavily in building on-premise, OpenStack or VMware? So, as I already said, the first stage that we need to take is to plan whether our applications are fit to move to the on-premise or not, whether it is the best case or not. So when we talk of cloud, we are not talking of only of public cloud. Yes, AWS is one of the best options in the public cloud, but if you have a private cloud, you are already using a private cloud and you are finding it efficient, you may still go with it. But there are certain features, since AWS is innovating at such immense rate, it provides a lot of services that might not be available on the private cloud. So if you want to leverage those services that AWS provides, like queuing service, like notification services, like transcoding services for videos, the mobile or analytics services. So the rate at which AWS is adding the services, you might not be able to launch the same services on the on-premise or on your private cloud. So that is the case when you find it a better fit to use public cloud, even though you have a very good infrastructure and a private existing cloud. So I hope it satisfies the answer. The next question is, what are the options for a big bank for migration to AWS? They are not embracing why. So when we talk of big bank or any public enterprise, the biggest concern why they might not be moving to the cloud, maybe the security considerations, and that is why AWS is launching different regions. If we talk of US, it has a specific Gov cloud which is specific for the public sector enterprises, so they are trying to provide a secure environment. But again, whether it be banking applications or any other applications, the question is, if they are legacy applications, they need a redesign, and you need to find out where your application will be running best. So as I said, there are services that are being launched. For example, in case of banking applications, a lot of communication is needed, a lot of notifications go on. So if we say of the customer front end, nowadays banks use a lot of analytics, use a lot of marketing. These are the services that they can directly leverage on the cloud. So the mobile features, the analytics, the customer facing ends, but maybe the hardcore processing, the financial applications may follow, but the customer facing, yes, they should be moved to the cloud. They could be moved to the cloud. Then we have a question from Nishant Bhardwaj. The question is about security. As mentioned, security issue, is our data not secure? If so, then why to prefer cloud? So when we are talking of security issues, the question was, before we move to the cloud, we need to ensure that our data will be secure. So when we choose a cloud provider, we need to check what are the options available with that cloud provider. So let's talk of AWS. In case of AWS, as I said, it provides encryption, it provides SSL. According to AWS, you are the owner of the data and only you can see your data. So it is not that the data is not secure. You need to examine what level of security your application needs and whether your provider does provide all those features and levels of security that you are expecting for your application. There might be scenarios where you might not have all the features. For example, if your data is to be restricted in a particular geographical location, AWS provides specific region, so it can confirm that your data will not move out of that region. So these are the considerations. Data is not unsecure, you just need to be careful about it. Another question we have from Bilde Kumar. The question is, number of users will be using the cloud. Will that affect the cloud server if the number of users increases? A very good question, because cloud is all about scalability. So when we talk of cloud, the applications are built to be scalable. You can tune your applications to launch new instances automatically or terminate the applications as and when the traffic reduces. So that is the strength of the cloud. So as the users increase, applications will adjust itself and there will not be overloading given your application is designed properly. And so I think one more question that we will be going to take at most, and as I said, we will get back with all other questions. So this is again a question, can we dynamically increase or decrease the spaces taken on the cloud? Yes, some of the cloud services are built to be automatically scalable. So if I take off a newly launched service, that is Elastic File System, EFS, you don't need to care how much storage you will need. It will automatically increase. You just go on storing data, you will be charged for the amount of data that you store, of course with the additional charges of data in or data out. And similarly, we have S3 and Glacier, where we don't have limits of data. They don't have any restrictions. So this was our last question for the day, and I will hand over to Sabha for the next steps and closing the webinar. Back to you, Sabha.
Thanks a lot, Ram, for this really empowering and insightful session today. I would also like to thank all our participants for making this webinar a great success. This webinar has been recorded and the recording will soon be available on techgeek.com. Thank you everyone for joining us.